Hello and welcome back. And do you know what? I'm going to let you guys behind the curtain a little bit and let you into a secret. Data storage is really dull, okay? I get it. This isn't a big YouTube channel. This isn't a YouTube channel that talks about sexy, interesting things. But there's still no avoiding the simple truth that data storage is not an exciting subject. It's a necessary subject. And it's been around now for so many decades that, notwithstanding that people take for granted that it just exists and will be there, but moreover, that even though technology changes more and more in the way people adapt with it and interact with it, from iPhones to new laptops and big old smart TVs, the fundamentals and the rudimentary building blocks of data storage have changed precious little. And in today's video, when I talk about this, Sabrent's new 10-bay DAS solution, you got to understand that the fundamentals of this, as a simple JBOD, just a bunch of drives enclosure that's connected over USB, has existed for literally decades. But it's the implementation and the way it has been delivered and the tweaks and improvements over the years which is what has made this interesting, but relatively interesting. Niche within a niche within a niche. So in today's video, we're going to unbox this. We're going to talk about what it can do, what it can't do, some of the things you might use it for, and overall at the end I'm going to say whether I like it or not. But I'll be honest with you, I actually quite like it. But let's get straight into it right now. This knocks around for about $599 right now. That's not cheap. The DS-U, I'm not going to look at my notes, I'm going to have to UCTB. I wish I had a catchier name than that. Now, first thing, let's address the large 10-bay enclosure-based sized elephant in the room. This is not a hardware RAID enclosure. A lot of people that buy big boxes like this, maybe they'll look at pre-populated enclosures from like Lacey, GTEC, something like that. One of the reasons they buy those is they're pre-populated and they've got RAID on board. That's right, RAID, redundant array of independent disks, or redundant array of inexpensive disks, depending how old you are, means that you can put multiple drives inside and it combines them all together into the best possible array, where you have things called redundancy, which is safety nets. So if one drive dies, all your data is still retrievable thanks to things called parity data in the case of a larger RAID like RAID 5 or RAID 6. But when it comes to these systems and RAID, that also provides performance benefits, where you have multiple drives being read and written to simultaneously. And although creating that parity for redundancy can be a bit of a draw in terms of performance, overall, multiple drives banded together do increase the performance. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Because none of what I said is included in this. It's a JBOD box, just a bunch of drives. As the name suggests, it's a bunch of drives all connected together in one enclosure, which, when you connect it to a host system, a PC, a Mac, and indeed a NAS, which we'll touch on later on, it allows you to then use your system and software that you can install to create a RAID. So although you are connecting just a bunch of drives into your system via a single USB cable, your PC or your Mac, using things like Mega RAID or Mac's very own RAID controller software, it will then look at those drives and create that RAID I just described. It uses the hardware resources of your PC, your Mac, or in some cases your NAS to create that RAID. And while the system is connected, it can see those drives and create that parity for you, and the data is written onto the drives in the appropriate fashion, with none of the work being done by the system and all of the work and the hard work sometimes being done on your client system. Now, that means that it's very hard to just disconnect the system and connect it with another one without running a small risk of instability. So when we talk about this device, bear that in mind. This is not a hardware RAID box. It is a JBOD box that you have to take care of the RAID. And for 599 quid for a 10-bay storage enclosure, that's incredible, because there'll be some of you going 599 for a brainless box, get lost. And there'll be other people going 10 bays, 599, why is it so cheap? I hope that little explanation helped it for both of you there. But let's unbox this thing. Again, lovely external packaging there, lots of images of the device, lots of information about the internals. Again, there's a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port there, which is going to be relevant later on, but it does also mean that if this device is populated with SSDs, you're not going to get that full bandwidth. But as mentioned, we'll go into that later. But for now, let's get top of the box open. Get that out of there. First things first, we've got our First time installation guide there, lots of information there about the individual bays, how to connect the device, hard drive installation procedure. They don't really make any direct recommendations on RAID software there, which there must be a reason for that, because when it comes to their SSDs, they generally recommend Acronis, and there's other software that they recommend on their other tools. Some of the USB tools is there for USB backup, but they don't directly recommend a software RAID service. So it's quite strange they don't include that. Inside, we've got our hard phone. Nice hard phone there. I'm sorry if that came up on the mic too loud. We've got our box of accessories. Let's open that up, see what we get for our bunks. The system utilises an internal PSU there, so there's no loose cable to fall out. I think once you get to like a scale like this, where it's a tower chassis, it's going to be an internal cable there. We've got here our external power cable there, our mains power cable even, to go inside there. We've also got two kinds of double thickness USB cables. We've got a USB-C to C cable and a USB-A to C cable. There is a single USB port on this, bear that in mind. We've also got our keys. Now those keys are going to be important later on. And finally, let's get that out of there. We have the remarkably heavy unit itself. Let's get this on the table. Have a look at this beast. And there is our chassis. It's actually a smaller form than I thought it would be as well. It's looking like a more micro version of a desktop PC. Those accessories out the way. Get that there. That is the Sabrent chassis. It's all branded there on the side. Now, a number of you may have only really heard of Sabrent in the last couple of years, and chances are when you've heard about them, they've done such a big job marketing their SSDs of late that a lot of people don't realise they have an enormous array of enclosures, docking stations and stuff like that. So them providing this big tower chassis like this isn't a surprise to me, but I know it's going to be a surprise to a number of users out there. It's completely metal all the way around. Again, you don't have to fully populate the device. That's another cool thing. It does support hot swapping there. So you don't have to power the device down, and you can introduce drives as you need them. You can create a RAID with just a few drives if you want. And depending on the complexity of the RAID controller software you use, as well as the RAID you choose to use, it does also allow an element of flexibility to expand a RAID or use more fluid RAID systems. We can use mixed media types and mixed media capacities to create things like tiered storage and more. Now, each of these bays can be locked. There's a locking mechanism, and you saw the keys earlier. There's no trays to speak of because the drives are injected directly inside the device. At the back there, you've got your SATA connector, combined SATA and data for when the drive immediately goes in. Again, spring-loaded there, which is quite good, and that helps produce the drive when you open the door. Another cool little feature about this is every one of those bays has its own power button there. So even when the device is powered on, because you are connecting drives via SATA ports and they should still appear, it's still nice to know that you can safely power down a drive if you choose to, as well as powering it on. So when you are putting drives inside, you've kind of got a middle ground there between cold installation and hot swapping there. You can have maybe 4 drives here in a RAID 5 configuration being managed over here by a PC or Mac system, but maybe you want to add a new drive. You don't necessarily either have to turn the whole device off and install the drive. You also don't have to have power running into the bay. You can just make sure it's turned off, grab your drive, slot it inside, and you're ready to rock. It's that straightforward. And again, depending on the complexity of the RAID software you use, what you can do with these bays will alter. Now, there's ventilation on the front of every single one of those bays. If we bring it to the front, you can just about make it out. Let's get the thumbnail for later. And there you go. How arrogant was that? At the base, there's no ventilation, but very big rubberized feet there on the base of the chassis. If we have a look at the rear, we have got some particularly large fans, 120mm fans there on the back of the system to keep things wonderfully cool during operation there. I think they may even be 150mm fans. There's no element of control of those fans. I think they are going to be completely automated. On the base of the system there, right there, you can blink and miss it. There is your USB-C port there, based on that system there. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. USB 3.2 Gen 1, part of the what the hell is going on naming convention of USB, means that you can get 10 gigabit connectivity, 1000 give or take a few megs of performance between the drives inside and the connected system, but only if it also has a USB 3.2 Gen 1 port. Now, it does have auto negotiation back down to USB 3.2 Gen 1, or USB 3 as it used to be known, at 5 gigabits per second, even right the way down to USB 2. But again, you're going to get the most out of this system when you are using it with Gen 2 times 2. That 1000 megs allows you, in the right RAID configuration, you don't even have to fully populate this, but if you used standard class hard drives, you didn't even go enterprise, you just went standard 5400 RPM, 128 meg cache drives, like 6 or 8 TB. Once you get 4 or 5 drives inside this system, inside a RAID 5, you should be able to largely saturate that 1000 megs. Now, if you're using SSDs, you're going to need less drives to do that. And remember, with the right software, you can create multiple RAID configurations on this device. Those multiple RAIDs in those 10 bays, you could have 2 RAID 5s with 4 drives each, and just a little RAID 1 there with 2 of the drives there at the top. Then have all the RAIDs set up via a connected cable to your PC or Mac, with it creating the RAIDs. And even though, yes, they're all sharing 1000 megs, if you're not accessing all at the same time, that means that whatever one you're interacting with, unless you choose to interact with the others, is going to get that 1000 megs. It does not have NAS capabilities. You can't install this inside any kind of dock to be accessed by multiple users without installing kind of intelligent mass handling software there, which turns it more into an IP protocol. That's something I wouldn't recommend for this, and you will substantially cut down that 1000 megs you can use. One of the things I'm really looking forward to doing on this device is connecting it with a few different NAS brands. Because when I dug into a lot of the hardware specifications of this device, not only just because it's USB and it's JBOD, but a lot of the components being utilized are near enough identical to that of JBOD expansion boxes from Acer Store, from QNAP, even from Synology, and TerraMaster doesn't even have one. So I'm going to be interested to see if this can be used as a NAS expansion chassis. If you've ever looked at NAS expansion chassis, look at the Synology one. It's a 5-bay, it uses eSATA, so there is a crossover cable required, but a DX517 is $550. This is $599. Again, it might not work. It is a completely different protocol and I don't recommend it, but I am still going to try. When it comes to QNAP, when it comes to Acer Store, when it comes to TerraMaster, I think we might get lucky with this device. Ultimately, when it comes to any expansion chassis or it comes to any DAS box, most of the money that you spend is going to be about stability. You don't want a system that's going to get too hot. You're not going to want a system that can't load and switch between those drives as needed and have an internal component handling all of that. But at least as far as the design is and everything I've seen in today's hardware review from the specification sheets and the components thus far, and particularly the design, I can see they're onto a winner with this. And despite it being 2022, there's still a big market for JBOD USB boxes. As I say, over the decades, data storage has, largely remained the same. The benchmarks have got faster, the technology more responsive, but demand has got greedy too. And with or without Moore's law, it still comes down to the fundamentals not changing and why a system like this still has a place. And if it performs as well as they say it will, and the hardware spec can be utilized with a NAS and with the multi-RAID support there inside, this might be one of the best DASs out there, at least as a JBOD in this scale as a 10-bay, which I don't see a lot of, that you could really get right now. But otherwise, I recommend holding fire until I do my software testing on this box. other than that, I can't really fault what I'm seeing here today. Thank you so much for watching. Do check out the review linked in the description over to NAS Compares. Do click like if you enjoyed the video, because it helps me understand what I'm doing right. And ever since they took that dislike button away, it's really knackered our ability to know what we're doing right or wrong. On top of that, click subscribe as we cover more subject to data storage in this year, next year, and hopefully the year after. And other than that, use the free advice section on NAS Compares if you need help choosing the right solution for you. But otherwise, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.